Hey everybody, welcome back to One Seed, One World. So today we're going to talk about 5 vegetables that you can grow in your garden that are nutrient dense, great for food security and food storage. With as high as grocery prices are now, you want to get the biggest bang for your buck when you're growing things in your garden if you're looking to replace some items by growing them in the garden to save you some money from the grocery store. Or replace the stuff from the grocery store and by growing them in the garden, I guess is what I should say. So let's go make a rundown of the top 5 best bang for your buck vegetables that you can grow. So the first one is going to be kale. So kale is one of the most nutrient dense vegetables on the planet. I mean, it's packed with vitamins A, C, K, has a bunch of calcium, antioxidants. But what makes it so great for food security? Well, it's cold hardy. It can survive frost. In fact, frost can actually improve the flavor. And it will keep producing leaves as you harvest it. It's a cut and come again. And it will grow into the deep winter with a little bit of help. So, a couple growing tips. You can plant it in the early spring. You can put seeds in even before your last frost and it will start growing. It prefers that cooler weather. It might take a little while to germinate, but it will come up and do well for you. Does not do as great in the heat of the summer, can tend to bolt, which means go to seed. So you can also do some succession planting and do it again in the fall and then have another crop that will grow over the winter for you. When you're picking it, pick the outer leaves first and it will keep growing all season as new leaves start forming in the center of the plant. And then you can also mulch around your plants to help it retain moisture, and it also helps keep some of the soil cooler so that way it gives it less of a chance to bolt when it's in the midsummer. So if you want to grow a green this summer, I would highly recommend growing kale because that is definitely one you'll get the most bang for your buck. So number 2 would be sweet potatoes. Now sweet potatoes aren't just delicious, but they're packed with fiber, beta carotene, which is your vitamin A, complex carbohydrates, which is great for energy and survival gardening. The thing that makes it great for food security is unlike regular potatoes, sweet potatoes store longer. They can grow in poorer soils. So if you've got soil that is kind of lacking in a lot of the good stuff, good nutrients, then sweet potatoes might be a better bet for you than regular potatoes. Also, it's a dual purpose plant because the leaves of sweet potatoes are edible, unlike regular potatoes, which you can't eat the leaves, of course, on those, but sweet potato leaves are edible. A couple of growing tips is you're going to want to start from slips and not seeds. They love warm soil, so you want to plant them after all chances of frost is passed in your area. And then you want to harvest them before your first frost for the best storage life. Once they've been hit by a frost, they tend to not last as long. So, right before your first frost date in the fall, that's when you want to harvest up your crop of sweet potatoes. So like I said, they are a dual purpose plant since the leaves are also edible. You don't want to confuse them with yams. Occasionally, sometimes grocery stores will label them as yams, but yams and sweet potatoes are 2 very different plants. And really, I think in most cases, in regular grocery stores, you're not going to find yams in the United States anyway. That's more something you would have to go to like a specialty store or an international store. My great-grandfather, growing up when I was a little kid, always grew yams out in our gardens, and he always, or did I say yams? He always grew sweet potatoes out in our gardens, but he always called them yams, and we called them yams growing up, but they were actually sweet potatoes that he was growing. And I'll do a separate video on the differences between the 2. So our third nutrient-dense vegetable for you to consider this year are beans. And this gives you a huge variety to choose from because you can grow beans that are like green beans for fresh eating and fresh cooking or for freezing and that sort of thing. Or you can grow different varieties of dried beans, things like black beans and scarlet runner beans, kidney beans, navy beans, those types of things. I mean, beans are one of the best sources of plant-based protein that you can get. Plus, they've got fiber and iron as well. They're also great for growing in your garden because they improve the soil by fixing nitrogen. They help replace the loss of nitrogen in your soil. And so that's great for sustainable gardening. And from a food security standpoint, the dried beans can store for years. And then fresh green beans keep producing all season long as you keep up with the picking. They'll keep producing as you're picking them. A couple of growing tips is if you have small spaces, grow the beans vertically. Get a pole bean variety. The beans come in, a lot of different varieties will come in either pole bean or bush variety. So depending on your space and kind of what you have available to you for growing spaces, you'll want to pick your varieties accordingly. And like I mentioned, dried beans like black beans or scarlet runner beans, they're great for long-term food storage and for food security. And then you can also, especially with the bush beans, you can plant in succession for continuous harvest throughout the summer. If one starts to go, you can always plant another batch midsummer and you'll have more like fresh eating beans in the fall. So if you're really looking for that protein punch from your garden, beans is where it's at. That's where you want to go. All right, number 4 is garlic. So garlic isn't just great for cooking, it's also a natural antibiotic, immune booster, and a heart-healthy food. It's great for food security because this is another thing that will store for months. It also has powerful medicinal properties to it, and it can be replanted year after year. So once you plant your first batch, if you save some, you can store, put some to the side for planting the next year. You can keep just planting off your own crop and then never have to buy garlic again because you'll just keep replanting from the previous season's harvest. A couple of growing tips is plant in the fall. Normally for here, at least in zone 7A where I'm at, I plant around September and then you harvest them the following June or July. People worry when they first start sprouting that, oh no, they've sprouted and I've got winter coming, it's gonna kill them off. They'll be fine. In fact, the taller your sprouts are by Christmas Day, the better crop you should have the following summer. The one thing you'll want to do is mulch them with either wood chip mulch or straw over the winter time, which will help protect the plants. But don't worry about your sprouts coming up and then getting hit by winter. They'll be fine as long as you've given them some mulch or straw protection. And then you'll harvest, like I said, around June or July the next year. So little garlic goes a long way. It's very easy maintenance, easy to plant. You don't have to do a whole lot to it once you've planted it. It kind of takes care of itself. All right, so number 5 is winter squash. Now, winter squash is another one of those things that you will have lots of varieties and choices. You don't have to stick with just butternut squash. There are plenty of other types of squash, like besides butternut, like acorn or spaghetti squash or pumpkins. So winter squash is full of fiber, vitamin A, potassium. It's great for food security because once you pick them and cure them properly, they store for 6 months or longer without need of refrigeration. As long as they're in a cool, dark place, they don't have to be refrigerated and they will last you throughout the winter. So you will be eating still fresh picked food out of your garden throughout the winter. Couple of growing tips. You're going to want to give them some space. Most winter squash gets very long vines, sometimes 20, 30, 40 feet long. Now some of the smaller squash like acorn or butternut, you can grow up trellises and they do very well as long as you have a strong enough trellis, and then you can save some space that way. But then of course some of the other bigger ones like say pumpkins, you're going to need more space for those. So consider what your growing area is like and what you have to work with when you're picking your varieties. You want to let them fully mature on the vine before harvesting. Normally that means that the stem has started to turn brown before you pick it. And it's normally right before your last frost or before your first frost date is when you'll be harvesting your winter squash. If they can handle a little bit of frost, but once they've been hit by frost, for one, the vines will die off, but once the actual fruit has been hit by frost, it makes them, they don't store as long. So you will want to make sure you get them in before that first frost. And then you'll cure them in a warm, dry spot for a couple of weeks, and then that will extend their shelf life for months. So winter squash is your fifth and final must-grow, food security, high density nutrient item to grow in your garden this year. So that's all 5. Put in the comments below, let me know if you've grown any of this stuff before and how you used it for food security or for nutrition, medicinal properties, whatever it is. Put some comments below, let me know. If there are certain things that you haven't grown before and are going to try this year, also let me know. I am trying sweet potatoes for the first time this year. I've got my slips on order. They'll be here this spring sometime. I got mine from Gurney's online, but there's different places that sell them online. But growing up, my great-grandfather grew them, but in our garden, so they were always around, but I've never grown them myself here. I've always just grown regular potatoes, so that one will be a new one for me. So, appreciate that you're here hanging out with me again today, and we hope to see you again soon. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, like, share, do all the stuff you're supposed to do. All right. Hope you're having a fantastic day, and we will see you again soon. Namaste.